Hi Isaac, I'm just gonna do kind of a video of Pecos' general routine so you know what it is, and I'm gonna just explain what he knows and what he doesn't, and then I'm also gonna do some training videos and explain to you what we're working on. So first I'm just gonna show you just our regular routine. I know you know how to brush a horse, and this is kind of boring. He does tie, but I like my young horses to learn how to stand patiently while I'm doing these things, so I usually brush him and tack him up untied. Yeah. So I'm just showing you guys this. This is what he knows with his feet. He's been good for my trimmer when I've had her out. However, he's never been shod. So he's probably going to be kind of worried and maybe a little naughty when that goes on. But I have been practicing banging on his feet with the hoof pick and stuff. And that might be something you guys can work on when you first get him, to get him used to having his feet messed with by someone who isn't me. You can go through, Laura. And to get him more used to banging on his feet before you get him shod. Now, I usually tack him up untied just because I think that when you tie up a colt while they're tied, if they were to spook at something mid-tack up, you could teach them to associate being trapped. When they're untied and they spook, they don't feel stuck, they don't feel trapped, so it doesn't encourage them to pull back or get weird about being saddled. He does tie up really well, however. He stood tied to trailers for hours. I'll tie him to trees. I'll tie him to the hitching post. He does not paw. What he will do is anything near his mouth, he will grab and shake around and destroy. So be careful about tying him up near things that you don't want him to tear down, because he's very playful with his mouth like that. He's been cross-tied a little bit, but not a lot. So be conscientious about leaving him in cross-ties places, because he just hasn't been cross-tied that much. When I go to tack him up, I want to make sure he's standing still and quiet. Part of his job starts with standing still and quiet for being saddled. And I want my horses, the whole time I'm working with them, to know that they're on the clock. I shouldn't have to move around him to make saddling easier. He should have to accommodate me to make saddling easier. Good job, kiddo. I'm using my reining saddle today, which does not have a rear cinch. He has been ridden fairly extensively with the rear cinch. He's used to that. He's never had a breast collar on, and he's also never had boots on. So when you first start riding him in boots, or if you decide to start riding him in a breast collar, I would definitely lunge him around a little bit before you just hop on. Just because with these young horses, when things feel weird and new, sometimes they can react. So see here where I'm kind of losing his focus, I'm just going to reach out and ask that foot to take one step back. And I like to be nice and slow with this cinch when I have the colts, so that they don't develop bad habits about being cinched right from the start. Now I generally will just hop on and go, but we're going to move to the round pen and take some video in there just so I can show you some of his groundwork, because I think when you first get him, it would serve you well to do some groundwork with him instead of just jumping on him right away. I do feel like he is safe for me to just jump on and go, but in the interest of showing you everything he knows, we're going to move to the round pen and do a little bit of groundwork. Okay, so especially when you're with a young horse, I think at a minimum, before you hop on, it's good to just walk them off in both directions and just see what you have. Sometimes it could be really cold out and they might be feeling frisky. Some days maybe you put a new saddle on them and it's touching them in a weird spot. So even when I hop on him, I will minimally just walk him one circle, stop and turn around, and just walk him in another circle, just to see what we're feeling. See if he's being responsive, see if he's thinking of me. So right now you can see his body language, his ears are in towards me, he's keeping his eye on me. He's thinking about me and not thinking about being silly. You don't need to stop. Now just to show you, I'll push him up into a trot. To ask him to trot while I'm lunging him around, I'm just going to pick up my hand and go. And if he doesn't trot off right away, I might wave this hand. You can also use a whip to help. This isn't a very long line to be lunging him on, but I just want to show you what he knows. When I'm ready to load, I just lift this hand up. Lobe is where if he's feeling fresh, he's had a few days off, this is where he might want to decide to buck a little bit. But he's been in pretty consistent riding, and so he lopes pretty quietly. To bring him back down to a walk, you can kind of see I just bring my energy down. Good boy. Let's go the other way. I'm going to ask him to trot off. Really unnecessary. You see how he's licking and chewing? That's good. That shows he's with me when he's kind of matches his lips. Once they're broke, I really don't think all that groundwork is super necessary, and the point of it isn't to get them tired. It's just to see, hey, are they paying attention to me as a safety check before you get on, which I think is a really good idea for you to do when you've got a brand new horse and he's pretty young. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I bridle him up. He's really good to bridle up usually, but he is young, and it's just important that you enforce good habits, or else they can get bad about bridling pretty quickly. I like to get organized before I even start. I wrap the lead rope around his neck, so if he tries to leave, I can correct him. I'm going to take off my halter. As I'm taking off my halter, I'm going to ask him to bring his head into me and down just a little bit so it's in a better position to bridle, and so he's thinking about what we're about to do. I'm going to tie the halter around his neck so I have added control. Could I bridle him up without anything on him? Yeah, he's not going to run away, but by having this here, I can help cultivate good habits so he's easy to bridle every day for the rest of his life. Good. So I make sure that he brings his head to me. I'm not trying to chase after his head. If he leaves with his head, I'm going to correct him. Just like with saddling, I want him to make this job as easy as possible. That's his job, is to help me out with this. So I set the bit under his mouth, I put my thumb in the corner of his mouth, and I'm just going to kind of tickle him until he opens his mouth, and then I lift this over his head, bend his ears under the headstall, and put it on. Even right there at the end, you see how he took his head away from me? I'm going to bring it back to me, correct that before I do the throat latch. This is really important with a young horse. Your older horses have been bridled a lot more. He's maybe been bridled 100 times in his life. That's not that much. And so it's really easy to create bad habits really quickly if you're not thoughtful about how you bridle them. Good boy. And the bit that is on this is just a plain snaffle bit. That's all he's been ridden in. He's also actually been ridden in a Bazell Hackamore a couple times. And then I also will just hop on him and ride him bareback in a halter. But most of his real riding has been done in this snaffle bit, and that's all you're gonna need with him for probably the next year or so, depending on what Jennifer says. So Pecos can be mounted from the ground or a block, or I've also mounted him from the arena fence before. Today I'm gonna mount him from the block, or from the ground, because the block's all the way over there and I don't wanna carry it. Just kind of the common theme, like with saddling or bridling, I want to be really thoughtful about how I mount up on him because he's young. So I don't want to mount him quickly today. I want him to be easier to mount tomorrow than he was today. Not that he's hard to mount today. It's just young horses can develop bad habits really quickly. So I want to be really aware of what I'm doing. So right now you see how he's standing with one foot like this and one foot back. He's already in an off-balance position, and if I hop on him while he's off-balanced, he's more likely to walk off because my weight throws him further off balance, and they correct that by walking off. So before I even go to step a leg on, I'm going to pull the saddle towards me a little, put some pressure on him, and get him to stand up underneath himself a little bit better so he will be more well-balanced when I go to throw a leg over. I'm going to shorten my reins here. Make sure he knows to stand still. I'm gonna have my reins short so that if he goes to walk off, I can correct him. Yeah, you're a good boy. Good, so he wanted to kind of walk off, so I was right there with my hand to correct him. An important way that I teach these colts not to walk off right when I get on is right when I get on, I'm just gonna stand and pet him for a second. If you walk off every time you get on, maybe you're in a hurry, you swing up and you walk off, pretty soon the horse is going to start walking off whenever you get on. All right, good kiddo. So now we'll walk off. When I first get on, I like to start by just kind of petting him, making sure he knows I'm up here. He's not so green anymore that I really have to do this. It's just part of our routine. And I'll do some bending to start, but I don't like to do my bending standing still. I like to kind of do it dynamically. So we'll ride a circle to the left. And then maybe I'll shorten my outside rein and ask him, put it on his neck and ask him to step the shoulder over, and then we'll walk out. I might ask him to step the hip over here. So I'll explain to you how to do these things in a second. But I'm just going to let him get used to being ridden first. Not used to it, but you know, you just got to get them in a learning frame of mind and in a working frame of mind. So something I really do work on is body control of the body parts separately. So I want to be able to control his head and neck, his shoulders, his rib cage, and his hindquarters. And I want to be able to control them separately. So two things I do to work on that is a turn on the hindquarters, which is when the hindquarters stand still and the front end moves around it. And I'll also do a turn on the forehand, which is where the front end of the horse stands still and the haunches move around it. So the way I do a turn on the hindquarters is I'm going to shorten both my reins. See, he's kind of getting ready. He's like, oh, she shortened her reins, we're going to do something. I'm going to move both of my hands to the direction I want to go. I'm going to go left, and I'm going to make sure his nose is bent to the left. And he should start stepping around. If he doesn't step around correctly, I might add leg. And since he's young, I don't really expect him to step around in a perfect circle. I'll do it this way too. Like, I don't expect him to do a full 180. I might just get a few good steps. There, 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 and then walk out of it. I want him to stay happy about working, and I don't want him to get confused. And so whenever he gives me a good effort, I'm gonna give him a release. Now to do a turn on the haunches, or on the forehand, I'm going to bend his nose the opposite direction that I want his hips to move. So I'm gonna bend his nose to the left to start, and then I'm gonna bring this leg here back and put it against his haunches and kind of bump and ask his haunches to step around. There, just like that. and I'll do it the other way too. So I'm going to shorten this rein here to bring his nose around, and then I'm going to use this leg and kind of bump on his hind end a little bit. If I have a spur on, I could also just use a spur. Get one more good step. There you go. Good boy. And so that's the start of being able to open and close gates on your horse, or you want to take a picture with your friends so you can just side pass on over. So the other thing I want to do is control his rib cage, moving his entire body sideways at once. So now that he can move his shoulders and his hips, I'll show you we can also do a side pass. So to do a side pass, I shorten the reins, and I'm going to move my hands over to move the shoulder, and then I'm going to bump with my leg on his side like this, and we're going to go sideways. Good boy. And he's just being a little bit fussier than usual, because normally I get on and we go do something, but today I got on and we're doing all these little lateral movements, kind of all standing still just to show you. Do a side pass this way. So here, when you're doing a side pass, you got to think about what end of the horse's body is ahead. So here, his shoulder is ahead. So I need to be a little stronger with my back leg to get the hips to catch up, and it caught up there. And actually, asking them to do a side pass out here in the middle of the arena is a little more difficult. When they're young like this, I might put their nose on the fence to do a side pass, or I might just only do it when I'm opening and closing the gates, or I might pick a pole and side pass over a pole so I have more of a guide. Good. Just to show you other buttons while we're standing here. To back him up, I shorten my reins, but I don't pull on them, I just shorten them, and then I'm going to add leg, and he starts stepping back. He's being a little fussy with his face, so we're done backing. I'm not squeezing with my legs anymore, but I'm not going to release on the reins till he gets soft here. There, got soft. He's kind of getting to a stage where he's being a little fussy on the bit, and I think Jennifer will probably be able to correct that pretty quickly by using a noseband. But I just think these babies kind of go through phases like that, and I think he's going to grow out of it pretty quickly. When he's playing with the bit so much, I just try not to release until he's done playing. So if I shorten the reins and pick up, I'm not going to let go of his face until he's soft. Okay, so now we're going to go actually do some riding, now that I kind of showed you his buttons. So I know that one thing you're really interested in is neck reining, and he's starting to learn how to neck rein. You can kind of see around here. So an important thing about neck reining is you're not pulling the horse over. You see how when I pull him, he actually bends the wrong way, his body gets kind of sticky, and I don't get a nice turn. The actual mechanics of the neck rein are, he is learning to be between my reins. So he's always going to be in between these reins. So if I move these reins slightly to the right, you see how he starts stepping to the right? And how I do that is, I'm going to move my hands to the right, and then I'm going to add outside leg till he steps over, and then I release that outside leg. So he starts to learn, oh, when the outside rein touches my neck, I need to move off of that. And I'll start out by doing a lot of this two-handed. What my inside hand, which is this hand, is going to do is make sure his nose is bent the right direction. My outside rein touches his neck, and you see how he's like, oh, I got this. I'm just going to step over. And from that work, I've now been able to build up to where I can do a lot of stuff one-handed on him and not get into too much trouble. Just kind of steering around like this. If I get into trouble, if you get into trouble, it's okay to reach down and grab the rein. But this is how we're starting to develop a horse that can neck rein properly. Now, it can take a year or two to really train them to neck rein correctly, but I believe you need to start asking them to neck rein from day one or working towards that, so they'll be good. All right, now we're going to go ahead and trot. Right from the get-go is a lot of transitions, so we're going to trot. give him a loose rein for a second. I'm gonna pick up on him again. And I'm gonna think, okay, let's trot, bring my energy up and bump with my legs a little bit, and he's gonna trot right off. Now I'm gonna kind of think about walking. I'm gonna sit down, kind of heavy in my seat. And you see how he really is pretty responsive in my feet? That might not be something you're really used to. When you think about it though, when you're trotting, go up to a trot. So as I'm trotting around here, I can feel my hat bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down. And there he was just being lazy. But I can feel my hat kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. And when I'm thinking, okay, I want to walk, I'm just going to sit down kind of firm in my seat and not let my hat bounce anymore. And he knows, oh, okay, her seat is resisting my movement, I'm going to break to a walk. I also, if he's not listening to my seat, I just have to shorten my reins up to let him know what the deal is. I can also play within the gait. I can think, let's trot as fast as we can. So I'm just going to kind of bring up my energy, get lighter in my seat, and let him trot faster. He's being kind of fussy with his face today. I'm just going to kind of ignore that and just keep going. And it's just dusty in here, so we had a little cough. So right now I'm thinking, all right, let's big trot, big trot, big trot. Now right here, I'm going to slow down my seat and think, let's trot slow. And we went a little too far and walked, and that's okay. That's part of learning. But now I'm going to think, let's trot slow. Good. So working on that kind of thing really gets him mentally with me. And so that's kind of a lot of what I've been doing lately, is working on these transitions from walk to trot to walk, and then within the trot and within the walk I'll work on fast walk to slow walk and fast trot to slow trot, and I'm working on that with my seat. Okay, now we're going to do some loping. He does not lope off from the walk yet, so I'll put him into the trot. The way I ask him to lope is I'm going to put my outside leg back on his hip, and then I'm just going to kiss. So outside leg back, and there we've got a lope off. Do lope on some contact, just in case he decides he's going to go off and do something silly. Then once I feel like he's warmed up, I can actually switch from loping around one-handed quite a bit. And he's young, so kind of in the lope here, he's a little wiggly. So to the left, he wants to drop his shoulder in. So I'm having to do a lot of picking up with my inside hand and putting my inside leg on him to push his shoulder out. Good. And then when I'm ready to trot, I'm just going to sit down and think trot. Good. Then we'll think walk here. Good boy. And now let's go ahead and go the other way. I know, he's not used to really being a demo horse like this. Normally we just kind of ride around, but I'm doing things a little more sequentially just so you can see. So same thing to the right. Just gonna hop up into the trot. I'm gonna use my outside leg and kiss, and there he lopes off. He's still young enough that sometimes he is gonna get the incorrect lead, and if he does get the incorrect lead, all you have to do is drop back to his trot and ask again. Now, the other direction I was telling you, he wants to drop his shoulder in. This direction, he drift his shoulder out a bit more. And usually horses are kind of like that. When I feel like he's drifting out, like right here, he's kind of drifting out, I'm gonna pick him up and turn kind of a tighter corner to get him to pick his shoulder back up. Good. Now we're just gonna lope around on loose rein for a little bit. So you can see kind of with one hand already in a snaffle, I can do quite a bit of steering. It's definitely not perfect and it's definitely not pretty. But he's getting there. And that's kind of where it starts off. And it's kind of at a point where I might try and steer one-handed, and if it's not happening, then I'm happy to switch to two hands. And I know eventually you want a fully one-handed horse, but it's just going to take, you know, a year or two of really working on it before you're going to get there. You can kind of guide around here at a trot one-handed. And all I'm doing here is laying this outside rein on his neck. Here, I'm going to go ahead and switch directions. Turn over here. And if he's not wanting to turn, I just kind of bump with more leg. Okay. Now, as far as his stop, what I do to stop is I'm just going to sit down, shorten my reins, and just kind of relax into my seat, and that's how he stops. If you want to get a bigger, more of a reining horse stop, it's pretty much the same thing, but you're going to add the word whoa. Not like that though, you're going to say it kind of deeper. I'll show you right here. Trot, 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 and whoa. Good, and that gets kind of a more urgent stop out of him. If you want to continue developing that so he has a better stop, I always like to back him up after a stop. Okay, so I know, Isaac, that you are a rancher and maybe one day you'll be roping off of him. I know that your cousin Rachel's roping off a jackpot a lot. So I've been starting to get him used to this rope, but you see he's just a little bit worried about it still sometimes. So this is a good opportunity to kind of show you how I go about getting him used to things and desensitizing him to things. He's not an overly reactive horse. That's why I know, even though he's a little worried right now, I don't feel like I have to get off or get on the ground. But if I'm ever working with a young horse in a rope and I feel uncomfortable, you can always just drop the rope. So I kind of like him to get used to it jumping around on the ground like that. I'm going to make a loop here, and when I start off with the rope, I just like to kind of walk around and swing the loop. When I'm desensitizing horses, I really prefer to do it in motion, because if they're standing still doing it, sometimes they're standing still in fear, like when a rabbit freezes when it first sees you, and then once they freeze in fear, the thing that comes next is they might explode. So I really prefer to walk around. So I'm going to do some of this until I feel him relax, which he has. And then I might kind of touch him some places with the rope. I might take it and kind of pat him here with it. Rub him on the neck with it. Let his feet touch it. And I put it on it. I would not advise that you do this because this might really spook him. But I'm balanced and I kind of know the horse, so I'll put it on over his butt like this and put some pressure on it. And I actually did this yesterday, but sometimes when you do this, they'll scoot forward a little. But I like them to just really get used to every aspect of the rope. I'm going to switch sides here. When you're switching sides, that's another point where you really need to be aware, because that can really scare them. So I guess like a big thing on a young horse like this is as you're riding around, just be really conscientious. It's not like you can't do things with him. It's not like I can't swing a rope around on him or I can't switch sides. I'm just gonna be thoughtful about it. I know that the horse you were riding before was a much older horse. See how that made him move kind of fast there, kind of quick? Got a little worried. I know before you were riding a much older horse, and on older horses, you can kind of be silly about things. You can kind of be careless and get away with it. But on these younger horses, if you're completely careless, you can get into trouble. So when I'm doing all this stuff, you'll notice I have my reins short, and I'm actively riding him the whole time. I'm not gonna just drop the reins and not think about what I'm doing, because if I were to just drop my reins and put my legs up on the saddle like this, he could spook and jump sideways, and then I'm not really in a position to correct him or help him, and that's not fair to him in the long run. So whenever you're working on this kind of stuff with him, make sure you're being really aware. Now I'm just going to let him feel the rope drag a little bit. He's being pretty good about that. Kind of wants to look at it here. As I'm swinging the rope up, I might let it flip up and hit him on the belly. Just like that. I don't mind that he's walking off here. I'm not a roper, so some of this isn't that pretty. I'm gonna let him walk off. He was getting a little worried, and like I said, I don't feel the need to make them stand perfectly still when I'm desensitizing them, and he's still a little sensitive to the rope. So now that I've kind of moved it around and just done some easy swinging, I'm gonna do some legit swinging like this. You see, his body language changes. He starts to get tight. Practice, and you see it hit him in the belly, and he was like, oh my gosh, it bit me. And that's why you need to be prepared. If I wasn't right there with the rein when it hit him in the belly and he thought he got bit by something, I wouldn't be able to help him through that. If he was on loose reins and wanted to trot off, then he would be even more scared. But it hit him in the belly. I was there with my reins to say, hey kid, you don't need to worry. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess I don't really need to worry. First start dragging stuff off the colt, if they get really nervous and it's more than you can ride, you always need to just drop it for your own safety. I'm sort of cheating here because Pecos pulled this the other night, but he might start to get worried. So when I first start dragging things off him, I'm going to drag it in a circle like this. Because when I'm on a circle, you can kind of see it out of the corner of his eye. And when he can see it out of the corner of his eye and he knows what's going on, he's going to feel a lot safer. When I start to do this and walk off with it behind him, see how he's starting to walk a little faster and just get a little bit tight. That's because he can't see it. Now he's like, okay, I see it, this is cool. And then I'm gonna walk off in a straight line again. Good, and this time he's actually like, okay, I know the drill, that's just a log back there. And now he is being pretty good about just pulling it off in a straight line. But when I go to pull it in a straight line, if I feel him get worried, I'm always gonna switch back to a circle to let him see it. This is important that you're dragging things on him, because you might have to drag like a live calf one day, and you want to start out with things like this, so when you have a live calf on the end of your rope, you don't suddenly have a horse freaking out. I also, sometimes in the branding pen, you're going to want to back up with it, so I'll practice some of this too. Good. Good. And that's about all the desensitizing work I'm going to do with him. See if we'll walk over. As far as obstacles and things, see kids on their older horses a lot, they'll kind of sit like this, get their legs up here like this, they'll drop the reins, they'll be talking to their friends, not paying attention, maybe drinking out of a plastic water bottle that's real crinkly. That's stuff you really can't do on him for a year or so until you really shouldn't do that ever, but I know that kids are gonna do what kids are gonna do. But with him, especially being young, you wanna always be thoughtful and thinking about how can I help him to succeed. And when you throw the reins away and kind of sit on him like that, like this, you're not really thinking, that's not gonna help him to succeed. And things like drinking out of a crinkly plastic water bottle probably didn't make your 20-year-old horse spook. They very likely might make him spook. And he's not a big spooker if your reins are short and you can correct him. But if you have a leg up over the cantle or the pommel and your reins loose and you're not even holding on to them and he spooks and you can't reach down and correct him, you can get into trouble. And that's just something I want to really drive home, because I know when you're riding older horses, they let you get away with a lot of that. Good. So once he's standing quiet, I'm just gonna pull him. Good. I like to pet him and tell him he was a good boy. And that's everything I kind of wanted to show you, just so you knew his buttons. If you have any questions at all, you know, I know you're going to be working with Jennifer, but please go ahead and give me a call if you have any problems. I'm going to be in Washington in December, and so if you end up needing some help, like, I'll come over and work with you, and I'm open to any questions. So let me know if there's anything else you need to know, but I'm really excited for you to get him this week.